Oh, hi, everybody. I'm Todd Wilson, and I'm excited to be talking about technology right now. Um, and, that was kind of a little setup. It probably didn't look very good, but I try. The thing about technology has become such a big deal in all our lives. It's almost inevitable and inescapable. And I have parents who just have this feeling like, I don't know how to get control of this. I want this time together to be something super encouraging, not to make you feel like you failed, because the thing is, we just can't beat ourselves up. We didn't know that if we gave our kids cell phones, we'd never see their face again. We didn't know if we let them play this little game, that's all they'd ever want to do for the rest of their lives. And so this is not slamming technology. I mean, I remember the first time I was ever exposed to entertainment technology. I remember it was, let me check my time here. I was, I don't know, a kid in the mid 70s, and I was at my cousin's house in North Carolina, Brian and Scott's. And as we were playing outside one day, my cousin said, "Hey, would you like to play something on television?" Now, I'd never seen anything and never played anything on television my whole life. Television was for watching, not for playing. And so we went into his family room, sat on a shag carpet in front of a big old console television, and he pulled out this box that had some wires on it. He handed us this thing. I didn't know it at the time, but it was a controller with a knob on top. And he turned it on the television, and that back then the televisions just didn't go blink. They went, whoa. It took a while for them to warm up. And when the image came on the screen, it was a dotted line coming down the center. It was a rectangle on one side and another rectangle on the other. And there was a ball bouncing in between. And of course, the ball was square, and it made that familiar bonk, 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 bonk sound. And we all knew it as Pong. That's right. And we played it, and for the first time, I could control something right on the screen. We played a car racing game that was also a square, and you could even turn on ice mode, and it would slide around the corners. And then we went back outside and played, and I didn't play it again for a long time. But a couple years later, I remember that we got word that Sean McIntyre was right around Christmas, got something really cool for Christmas. And so I don't know if it was Christmas Day or the day after, but my brothers and I, we piled into our van, and my dad drove us up to Sean McIntyre's. And we were introduced to something we had never seen before. It was called an Atari. And I mean, it was, the little guys doing jumping jacks across the screen, and we were shooting them and played asteroids. And then I guess I just fell asleep, because I don't remember how technology changed after that. I know that I finished out school, high school, went to college, and then I got married and had a few little kids. And I started to notice that little kids around our church were carrying these boxes, these things that they could play games on. And as they were playing them, I can remember saying in my head, maybe out loud, "I'm never going to let my kids play these games. We're going to spend our time praying or reading the Bible or serving the poor." But someone introduced us to educational computer games, because we had a computer. And I remember the very first one, Winnie the Pooh and the Honey Pots. And my kids could take a cursor and put it right over a red honey pot, and it would say red, or it would count 1, 2, 3, 4, or you'd put it on Tigger and he'd, that kind of thing. And it was amazing. I thought, wow, this is what learning was meant to be. It's educational. The kids are entertained and learning. And then but like one game doesn't last. So you have to go to another, and then another. And I remember we went to like, Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego, where they'd learn geography. And finally they went to the Oregon Trail. Maybe you remember that game. It was, there was a little person on the screen, and they're talking to you. "Howdy, folks, and welcome to the Oregon Trail." And you had to trade for things so you could make it across. And I thought, wow, this is amazing. But it was about that time that my wife started to notice that things were changing in our house. In fact, she'd say, "Todd, it seems awfully quiet. Is that a problem?" And I'm like, "It's perfect. Our kids are quiet and they're learning, win-win." But then I noticed that their tone started to change. They started arguing over things, crying over things. I'd say, "Hey, it's time to eat." And they'd say, "Yeah, but I haven't played my game yet. I didn't get my time. They got their time. Why did they get 2 turns? I only got 1 turn." they would lie, you know. I'd see them sitting in front of the computer and they weren't allowed to play. And I'd say, what are you doing? And they're going, nothing. And I'm like, well, you got the game on. Well, I'm just seeing how it works. And I'm like, where I live, that's playing the game. And so I wrote this little email to my email list and hope you all sign up for it. I said, I felt like a techno beast has invaded our home. And that's when everything changed for me, because I got this email from a dad, and his daughter was kind of addicted to video games. And he said, you know, addiction to video games can hit at any age. Hopefully we've stepped in early enough for my daughter that any damage will be kept to a minimum. As for me, video games were one of the reasons why her mother left me. Video games on my days off from work were my drug of choice. I was working every chance I had, ignoring everything else in life. I loved my job and actually loathed the times that I was scheduled off until I found this online playing this game. And he said, there were days I would forgo sleeping and eating for the opportunity to play. There were days that I would play for 20 hours straight, sleep for 4 hours or less, and then sign on again. In those brief times I did sleep, my dreams were filled with images from the work. He said, I was convinced that my virtual life was good. I was actually shocked when my wife told me she was ending a relationship. She told me that she felt abandoned and that she knew that our family was not as important to me as my job or this stupid game. And, you know, when I read that, I thought, oh, wow, that's bad, but that's got to be a fluke. You know, that just doesn't happen. But as I share that story, other moms came out of the woodwork and said, you know, my husband does the very same thing. I wake up in the middle of the night and I can't find him. And then I find him down in the bathroom playing his video game. And I remember it was about that time I was talking about it. And this guy came up to me after a talk, and he was a young 24, 25, maybe good looking guy, and, you know, big, tall, strapping. And he came up and said, you know, Todd, I lost my wife because I was addicted to a game called World of Warcraft. And we talked, and, you know, it was sad. And as I walked down the aisle leaving him, I saw out of the corner of my eye, my peripheral vision, I saw this other man walking along, and I knew he was going to try to intercept me. And he did. And we met in the back, and he said, hey, Todd, I'm a pastor, and I've been counseling 5 couples whose husbands are all addicted to this game called World of Warcraft. I'm like, wow, I just had this conversation. He said all 5 ended in divorce. You know, here's the deal. I would be afraid to go into Walmart if I knew of 5 marriages that have failed in Walmart. And yet we treat some of these things so casually, you know, like it's no big deal, you know, because really this techno beast doesn't start out as a huge techno beast. It begins as this cute little gadget, you know, this little guppy. I remember, you know, the very first time I had an email and I sent it off, and it went out, and then it came back real fast and all across the world. And I thought, wow, this is amazing. But, you know, little gadgets don't stay as little gadgets. Little guppies don't stay as little guppies. They kind of begin to grow. And as they grow, they get some claws and some fangs, and they go from just cool gadgets to time wasters. You know, where you're just wasting time. You know, you're Googling your name, you're you know, checking out every website. What's the Swahili word for snake? But they don't stop there. They continue on till they're time consumers, till you just find yourself spending more and more time. You know, you make promises to yourself like, okay, I'm not going to do this. I'm only going to do this for 15 more minutes, and then I'm going to get off. And 2 hours later, you go, whoa, I can't believe I'm still on it. And you go, okay, 10 more minutes, then I'm off. You know, you find it calling you. But it doesn't stop as a time consumer. It really goes to that full-blown techno beast, that you know, idol or even a god. And I just got lost. And you know, and when I say the word idol or god, I know what you're thinking of. And I'm going to disappear here and grab my Bible. I know what you're thinking of. You're picturing some kind of by the way, I'm in my office. This is all the stuff that surrounds me. It's all the stuff I've collected from my kids and my wife and just life. But this full-grown idol or god, you picture, you know, kind of a gold thing standing up, and you know, maybe made out of wood or stone. And in the Old Testament, there were lots of idols. Probably the worst were 2 named Chemosh and Molech. And they were kind of fashioned in this human form. They were hollow. And you would put a fire inside them. They had maybe outstretched arms to accept the sacrifice. And I guess the ultimate sacrifice back then was to take your children and to lay them in the arms, still alive, to be consumed by the fire. And when I think about that, it just really makes my heart stop. And I think, how could anybody do that? But really, it makes perfect sense, because that's what God's demand. They demand the ultimate sacrifice, your family. How could anybody lose their family over a stupid game or by spending too much time, on Facebook or whatever? Because that's what idols and gods demand. They demand their families. And while I was talking or thinking about this techno beast, I found them in the Bible. Now, if you do a word search, you won't find techno beast in the Bible, but here it is in Proverbs chapter 7. And this is written by a dad to his kids, or said to his kids. And it says, "My son, keep my words and store up my commands within you. Keep my commands that you will live, and guard my teachings as the apple of your eye. Bind them on your fingers, write them on the tablet of your heart." And then he says, "Say to wisdom, you're my sister, and to insight, you're my relative. And they will keep you from the adulterous woman, from the wayward woman with her seductive words." Really, that phrase, adulterous woman, could be imposter, or someone who's a virtual wife, someone who's not your real wife, but she's kind of pretending to do some of those aspects of that. And then he goes on and he says, I'm looking out the window and I see this young, naive guy, and I think he sees himself. And he says he's out, and this woman comes to him, or she's boisterous and fun, and says, "Come on, the master's gone, let's go have some fun." And then it says, with her persuasive words, she led him astray. She seduced him with her smooth talk. All at once he followed her like an ox going to the slaughter, like a deer stepping into the noose, till an arrow pierces his liver, like a bird darting into a snare, little knowing it will cost him his life. Now then, my sons, listen to me. Pay attention to what I say. Do not let your heart turn to her ways or stray into her paths. Many are the victims she has brought down. Her slain are a mighty throng. Her house is a highway to the grave, leading down to the chambers of death. And when I read that, I thought, that's the techno beast. Same end result, different disguise, because the techno beast knows how to fish and what he's fishing for. I'm not a big fisherman, but I used to like to go fishing with my dad. And we would go out in this aluminum boat. My dad had this little aluminum tackle box with the green handle. And we'd get out to the spot where the fish were, and he'd open up his tackle box, and I'd reach in there and grab the biggest lure I could find. And he'd say, "No, not that lure. That's not what you want." And I'm like, "Yeah, but this is huge." And he'd say, "Yeah, but the guy down at the bait shop said, this is what they're biting on this year." And he'd put the big one I picked out back in the tackle box, and he'd pull out this long, slender one that was black on top and gray on the bottom, or vice versa. And then he'd put it on my line, and I'd toss it out in the line, zzz, bloop, and then I'd reel it in as fast as I could, and it would just skip across the water. And he'd say, "No, don't do that." He said, "You can't catch fish that way." And I'm like, "You can catch the fast ones, the big ones." He said, "No, this is what you want to do. You want to throw it out, and you want to crank it a little bit, give it a tug, let it drop, crank it a little bit, give it a tug, let it drop, crank it a little." And now he didn't say it this way, but what he was saying is, you want to make this virtual fish look like a real fish, because that's how you catch fish. I think the imposter knows how to fish for us, and he fishes for boys and girls differently. With a different lure. And if you think about it, boys are typified by being sensual warriors. And by sensual, I don't mean what you're thinking. They just like their senses tantalized. They like loud, they like big, they like boom, boom, boom. The music, like the pinball machines of the 50s and 60s that lots of lights and action, and we're warriors. We like to kill, maim, and destroy, whether you like that or not, Mom. And, even where I live in an area with a lot of Amish people. And I remember one time I was out working, and this Amish buggy pulls up, and this family gets out, and this dad's getting out, and it just looks like an Amish postcard. They're all in black with straw hats. But the dad gets out this little boy, and he's got, overalls with no shirt underneath, and bare feet, and little blonde Dutch boy haircut, little straw hat. And the dad sets the boy down, and then the dad gets out this little tricycle, and he gets it out for his son, and the dad walks away. The little boy, he's probably 3, he gets up on that tricycle, he puts his hands on the handlebars, he looks to see if his dad's there, and then he goes, "Whoa, whoa, whoa," and he drives off making motorcycle sounds. And I thought, that little boy has a need for speed. You may try to take it out of him, but it is in him. The same with your boys. They have that need to be warriors. I remember with one time with my wife, we were at a movie, which we don't do very often, but we were waiting and there was previews of this dark, sinister, dragony, screaming fire movie. And my wife leans over and she goes, "That looks terrible." And I lean back and I'm like, "Yeah, it looks amazing," because I picture myself as the warrior, 1,000 to 1, but the odds are even, that kind of thing. That's your boys. I think that's why your boys like guns and knives. My kids love knives. Right now, they were upstairs just talking about some big, expensive, sharp knives that they'd like to have. And I remember the very first time, I didn't realize it until the very first time we went to like a national park. We went to the Liberty Bell. And when you go to Liberty Bell, you have to go through metal detectors in case you're carrying a sledgehammer or something. And as you go in, you have to take all the contents of your pockets and put them in this like dog dish, like you do at the airport. And we're standing in line, my kids and I separately, and my wife, and this guy comes over to me. He's a park ranger. He's got the little Smokey the Bear hat on. He comes over and he says, "Excuse me, sir, are these your children?" And I'm like, "Yeah, didn't they break the Liberty Bell already?" And he said, "Could you follow me?" And I said, "Sure." And I walk over, and sitting in front of my boys is this dog dish piled high with knives. It looked like we were going to take over the town of Philadelphia, And he's like, "Are you from the country?" I said, "Sure." We learned a lesson that day. But my kids love those things. I think that's why they love this. This is the weaponry of today. They love to sit around there and swipe by and look at it and see how many gigawatts it has. My girls care less. They just like to have a cool case with a nice camera on it. So that's a boy. So you can see how the imposter would fish for boys. Nonstop shooting action games, where the stakes are high, but you can live to come again, and you become a hero. And girls on the other hand, are not sensual warriors. They're communicators. They're relational. They like to talk, So you can see how the imposter fishes for girls. I mean, you have Instagram and Facebook and Pinterest and TikTok and all those things that are nonstop communication, so they can just do this all day long, And so as I thought about this, I thought, like this is insidious. And so I started devising this little battle plan. And by battle plan, I don't mean, it's like this big, deep thing. It's just some way that I thought that we could deal with this. And the first thing is this: don't minimize it. Don't blow it off. Don't say, "Well, everybody's doing it, so we have to do it." I used to say not everybody's doing it, but the truth is everyone is doing it, and dads will say to me, "Yeah, but we got to teach our kids life skills." I don't know if we're teaching them life skills, but we are teaching them death skills, because there are ways that we need to teach our children, how to do battle with this techno beast, or they're just going to be another statistic. Because that's my fear, that my kids are going to be swept away in this wave of technology and I will have done nothing. So don't minimize it. Number 2, remember the goal. That's what parenting is all about. It's not about little boys and little girls wasting their time. It's not about teenagers, wasting their time. It's about little boys and girls and teenagers who will grow up to be moms and dads who will be tempted to exchange real relationships that are hard. And are real relationships hard? Yes, for virtual ones that are easy, and no good. And, in fact, this idea of looking towards a goal, it's really the idea of parenting. Everything we do is for later. It reminds me of the Karate Kid, the movie, not the new one, the old one, with real actors like Ralph Macchio and the story is Daniel LaRusso, that's the star, Ralph Macchio. He's getting beat up. He wants to learn karate. He finds Mr. Miyagi, his building superintendent, who said he will help him become a karate guy. And so Daniel LaRusso shows up the first day, and he's got this bandana on across his head, his little Asian symbol, and he's got these cut off sleeves, and he's ready to bust boards and break bricks. And he shows up, and Mr. Miyagi comes to he goes to Mr. Miyagi's house, and Mr. Miyagi has these 2 buckets of suds, and he takes him out to this long line of cars where he has to wash them all and wax them all. And we get those famous lines, wax on, wax off. You know, the next day he thinks, okay, now today's going to be the day. But instead he has to paint this fence, and he has to paint a fence, and he's got to paint it different ways for different boards. And then he has to, the third day he thinks this has got to be it. And he has to sand the floor, and he's got these sanding pads, and he has to do it a certain way. At the end of that time, Daniel LaRusse is like, I'm sick of this man. His shoulder hurts. He throws down the pads. He's like, I'm done. Mr. Miyagi goes, Danielson! And he claps his hands together, and the music goes, boom. He goes, Danielson, if you hear this loud noise in the background, that is my dog barking. I'm about to ready to go up and throttle him, but I'm trying to not pause so you can't hear him. Just listen to that. The good news is he can only do that for the entire day. And so Mr. Miyagi says, Danielson, and he massages his shoulder, and he says, you know, kind of assume the karate position, and he goes, ah! And Daniel LaRusse defends himself by using wax on, wax off, paint fence, sand the floor, all that, and he's learned karate. You know, the thing is, that's parenting. You know, we the things that I'm about to share with you, we do because, not because they'll understand it now or because they'll like it now, but that one day when they become parents, they'll go, oh yeah, boom, that's why my dad or mom did this, you know? And so remember the goal. Number 3, check your own life and see if the techno beast has you, because the truth is, moms and dads, he's got us. You know, I'm not a video game guy. I don't like video games. I like email. You know, my dad before me liked mail. And every day at, he owned a little print shop. He would come home about 3 o'clock to check the mail. We knew we weren't supposed to get the mail. He was supposed to get the mail. And because the mail brought checks and money and orders, and he loved it. He was always whistling. You know, in my house, the mailman doesn't come every once a day. He comes every second. And so I would find myself checking the email, you know, a couple times every, you know, five times every minute sometimes, just seeing if there was another one. I'm like, oh, there's something. Oh, not this time. Oh, there's 3, you know. And in fact, I would come home sometimes from a speaking event with my wife, and I'd have a kid over each of my shoulders, and I'd be downstairs, you know, holding these kids, checking the email, and my wife would yell from upstairs, you're not checking your email, are you? And I'd step back and go, no. Sounds like my kids, right? You know, being deceitful about, you know, what I was doing, because I was being reeled in by the techno beast. You know, again, dads, if your wife says to you, you know, are you going to play that stupid game again? Or you're always playing that game. That means you're being reeled in by the techno beast. Moms, if your kid says, Mom on Facebook again, or is Mom on Instagram, or Mom, you're always on, that's because you're being reeled in. Now, I get it. You know, when we first had iPhones, I can remember my kids saying to their mom, oh, Mom likes her phone better than she likes us. And my wife said back, just kind of jokingly, but I thought there was some truth in it. She goes, you know, my phone never makes me mad. You know, and that's true, because that's being online is like being in Candyland, where everybody's happy, all the food's great, everybody's having a great time. You know, it's not like home where everything's hard. Video games, same way. Adventure, life is hard, and they don't seem to like you very much. So we retreat there. You be careful, because you might be being reeled in. And if you don't know, which I'm not sure that's probably true, but if you don't, can I ask you to be bold enough to ask your spouse? Ask your wife, honey, do you think I'm being reeled in by the techno beast? You know, and ladies, I know lots of husbands who say their wives are, but they're afraid to talk to them, and I get it. So ladies, ask your husband, do you think I'm being reeled in by the techno beast? If you don't think your spouse will be honest, ask your kids. They'll be brutally honest. So that number 3, check your own life. Number 4, the dog's still barking. Do what you have to do. You know, you're the parents. You know, if you feel like your kids are being swept away or being reeled in, then do something about it. Parents will say to me all the time, well, I feel like my kids are playing too many video games. And I'm like, they'll say, what do you think? I'm like, I don't care. I don't care about your kids. It doesn't matter what I think. And they'll say, yeah, but I think they are. And then I'm like, then they must be. So do something about it. Do whatever it takes. You know, my dad, again, before the days of video games, when someone would call our home phone, you know, a landline, my dad would answer the phone. And if it was late, like say 10 o'clock, and they'd say, hey, is Todd there? My dad would say, it's too late to be talking to Todd. And he would hang up. He didn't say goodbye. He didn't apologize. He didn't even tell me. But his thinking was he didn't have to because he's the dad. You know, is it wrong to wear earbuds in your ear? Of course not. I remember the magic of putting on a Walkman cassette for the very first time. Like, wow, this is amazing. You know, but is it okay to have them in all the time? Of course not. Can you say, hey, guys, take your earbuds off. I don't want you to have them in right now. Yes. I remember, you know, being at Disney World one time with my whole family and my son. We were standing in line. My son was right behind me and he's on his phone. And I said, hey, can you put your phone away? He goes, what do you want me to do? Just stare at your back? And I'm like, yes, that's exactly what I want you to do. So that when I go, hey, look, you'll look, as opposed to what? I can't, you know? So you do whatever it takes. I'll tell you, when our kids were playing video games, we didn't know anything. Like, you didn't know anything. So we let our kids play video games. After a while, we decided that's too much. So we're going to let them play an hour on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. But you know what they ended up doing? They played their hour. Then they watched the brothers and sisters play their hour. And so it was like they're playing a whole bunch of hours. After a while, we got little timers and we said, okay, you get an hour. If you watch your brother, that is your hour. If you go over your hour, you lose your next hour. If I don't see you using the timer, you're done. You know, you're in trouble. And even then we felt like they were still playing too much. So we reeled it in a little bit more. And, you know, even recently, I've got a 15 and 14-year-old sons. And we, for the last, I don't know, lots of years, we've always taken the summer off. And we don't let them play video games. You know, when we first did it, you'd think we'd cut off their legs. And they're like, but you know, after about the first year, I can remember the second year, them saying, are we going to do that no video game thing? And I said, yeah. And they said, good. Well, with my last two children, we've decided we're not going back to video games. And I mean, I thought it was going to be World War II because, you know, their cousins would call them and say, oh, okay, you want to get online? We'll play a video game. And we're kind of like, well, I guess, okay. And then, you know, some other cousins would call and then some friends. And then it just felt like they were doing it all the time. And my wife thought of prompting and she's like, let's do it, Todd. And so we said, hey, guys, we're not going to play video games anymore. And you know what? My kids didn't die. In fact, they hardly complained. And in the months that we've done that, which have been a lot of months now since the summer. So whatever it is, you know, here we are in the beginning of February as I record this. They haven't complained. I don't even think once. And I think that's, in fact, I was talking to my older son, 15-year-old son, and he said, you know, it really just gives me more time to do the things that I want to do. Wow. Could it be that they're just waiting for us parents to make a stand and draw some lines? Again, does the Bible say you can't play video games? Of course not. But I think he's put it in our hearts to know when it gets out of hand. So draw lines. Hey, and talk to your kids about it. You know, my goal is not to draw these lines and then so one day they get out of my control and they go, woo, now I can play all I want. That's not what I want. I want to talk them through these things so that one day they get to be adults and maybe they'll play video games. But maybe it'll come to a point that they hear a boom and they go, oh, man, I'm being reeled in. I got to bring a stop to this. So you do what you have to do. Number 5, replace it with real stuff. Here's the deal. When you have little kids, you know, the reason your boys want to, you know, kill, maim, and destroy, the truth is they want to kill, maim, and destroy with you, dads. You know, they want to, this dog is driving me nuts. And they want to be able to, you know, drive fast and shoot things and throw things and do things. But sometimes that's the thing about being this techno beast. As much as we hate it, we love it because we can say to our kids, hey, you know, I don't want to be bothered. Why don't you go play your video game? And they're like, shoom, right out of there, you know? But dads, you need to replace it with other stuff. If you have to buy them some things where they can burn off some energy, buy them some things. It's a great investment. Moms, your daughters, you know who they want to constantly communicate with or talk with? They want to talk to you. Maybe not all the time, but they need to talk to you sometimes. Husbands, the reason your wife is on her phone all the time is because she can't talk to you. I had a friend who said, I told my wife I just can't be her little buddy. I can't chit chat all the time about all these other things. Well, you know what? She's got lots of little buddies now. My fear would be that someday those little buddies might turn into a big buddy, because that's the way it works. The last one. I like to think of this as about killing the beast and all maybe wrapped up together. I like to maybe leave you with this image. One of my favorite Disney films is Beauty and the Beast, the cartoon, the animated one. Can't believe I said cartoon, animated feature. And my favorite character is Gaston. Gaston is the loud one, the kind of the villain who's like, I use antlers in all of my decorating. That guy, I'm especially good at expectorating. But at one point towards the end of the movie, he's like whipping the townsfolk up into this mob. And he said, the beast won't make off with our children in the night. I won't rest until his head is mounted on my wall. And then the chorus goes, kill the beast. And this big drum goes, boom, kill the beast. Boom, kill the beast. Boom. You need to think that way. When you see your son or daughter, doing that, kill the beast. Boom. Or maybe it's yourself when you're playing that game in the wee hours of the night, kill the beast. Boom. Or when you hear your daughter or son say, Mom, when are you going to get off your phone? Kill the beast. Boom. But here's the deal about this beast. This beast does not die. In fact, once you whack it down over here, it springs up over here, and there are times I'm like to my wife, do we have to make a stance on everything? And, and the answer is yes, we do, because that's what parents do. In fact, again, even when I was talking about do whatever you have to do, hey, even in your own life, if you have to get rid of something, get rid of it. If you have to get rid of your video game console, get rid of it. I got rid of my smartphone. This is not a smartphone. This is a dumb phone that looks kind of like a smartphone. I had this one, but my family thought should be upgraded. But I don't have any data. I can text, I can email, I can check the weather. It's got a clock on it too. Not a very good camera. And I did that because when I had my smartphone, I was constantly checking. I was checking Facebook. I was checking things, and it was like I get these phantom buzzes in my leg. And I didn't like that because I was being reeled in. Dads, I've had lots of dads say to me, oh, I wish I could do that, Todd, but I'd never get rid of my phone. Not to be harsh, but I think if you feel like you should, then you're a fool if you don't. Because it is better, because Jesus said it, it is better to gouge out if your cell phone causes you to sin, or if your iPhone causes you to sin, gouge it out. It's better to go without it, than to suffer the consequences of later. So moms and dads, I know this isn't easy, but you can do it. Hey, if you'd like to hear more, you can go to our website, familymanweb.com or thesmilinghomeschooler.com. And we have a lot of products there to encourage you. We even have this Taming the Techno Beast in a book form for parents, a little booklet. And for kids, we even have it in workbook format that they can work through some things, talk with you about. We've got lots of other books to encourage you. And I hope you'll check that out. If you're into podcasts, we have a podcast for homeschoolers called The Smiling Homeschooler. You can find it wherever you find your podcast. And if you're a dad and you want to listen to Just for Dads, we have the Family Man Show. Hey, I want to thank you for joining me. And don't forget, kill the beast. Okay, I have to look down to turn off this thing now. Okay, I can barely see it with my bifocals.